Hey everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow out of Diagnostics. Real quick one today. I already have this one diagnosed. Mercedes 2012 GL450. We've seen this one a couple times before for a no crank situation. Now it starts up fine. The customer wants to take it on a long trip, and he told me the air conditioning hasn't worked in about 2 years. And he said, the whole family is going in this thing, so he wants the air conditioning working to go to South Carolina or whatever. Before he called me, he tried a new air conditioning compressor. Put it in, obviously it didn't fix it. That's why I'm here. So let's take a look at the fault codes in the AC system and what this thing is doing. So let's see here. On live data, you see this request to AC compressor, right? So we start it up, and it tries, and then it says compressor status PMW output for compressor actuation short circuit or open circuit. So it doesn't like something about the output, so we need to take a look at the wiring diagram and see what feeds this compressor, what causes it to turn on. It's not a clutch compressor, it's a variable type compressor. That's why it has a 0 to 100% duty cycle control, but it's not happy about something. Let's see what that is. Alright, here's a redrawn wiring diagram, and I did compare to the OE. This one's a little easier to follow. So this is our Comfort AAC control and operating unit. That's the HVAC controller. And this violet and black wire goes up, and here's our refrigerant compressor. It looks like a switch in here, but it's that valve, and this is a variable voltage, and it's just grounded. So pretty simple. The more current goes through here, the more refrigerant is pumped through the compressor. So let's get under the car, get to these wires, and see what the controller is doing on that circuit and why it's not happy. Alright, so to make things a little easier, I crawled under there, disconnected the compressor on that feed wire, and attached two leads with piercing probes. So the yellow lead comes from the HVAC controller, and the black lead goes to the AC compressor. Okay, so basically if we connect these two, it'll be like a connected circuit like the car is supposed to have. So we can do all of our experiments with these two leads. What do we want to check first? Alright, so first thing I want to do is check the resistance through the compressor, through the valve. So on this lead, the black one is coming into this port, the input, and the COM is just a ground. So I have this other lead, just the black wire attached to the body ground. So, but 12 ohms, that's reasonable. So at full blast, at 100%, this valve should draw about 1 amp. Keep that in mind. Now, the computer's obviously, or the controller, is saying, hey, there's a short circuit on this wire. So what I want to do is substitute a smaller load on that wire, like 300 milliamps, and see if the controller is capable of turning that on. We could also measure the resistance just to see if there's no short circuit on that leg from the control wire to ground, and it's 0.5 mega ohms, so it's not like rubbed through somewhere, it's not shorting to ground. That's a quick check we can do. So now I have a collection of test lights, and here's my little 300 milliamp. So how do we want to hook this up? You want to think about the current flow. We can even measure the amperage using the amp setting on the voltmeter. So current is going to be coming in on the control wire into here, and instead of going through the compressor, we want it to go through our baby test light. So now it's going to go through the test light, and the test light has to be grounded, obviously, and that will be this black lead right here going to body ground. Okay, so we have amps, we have the test light. Let's turn on the car and see if it ramps up the voltage here appropriately while looking at scan data. So right now it's 0%. Look at that. See, it's ramping up the amperage, and it ramped it up to 100%, so our test light's nice and bright. So that tells me the controller wiring is good, and it can carry at least 300 milliamps. So we can stress this circuit a little more. Remember, the compressor valve should draw about 1 amp. So let's add half an amp to, in parallel to this test light. So from here, and the other lead of my bigger test light, so you can see I took one bulb out. So now this bulb is just adding half an amp. So it'd be half an amp plus 300 milliamps, so 0.8 amps. Okay, let's plug in, also ground this one out, and see what happens to our amperage. Okay, 0.8. Now this bulb is lit and this bulb is lit. We still have 100% on the AC compressor. Okay? So it can carry 0.8 amps, but it can't carry 1 amp. Very interesting. If I push this button right here, it'll actually cut down the AC to 50% now. About half an amp. Okay, so it's fine. It's like it's controlling the compressor just fine. So wiring is good. The compressor wasn't the problem. This one's fine. You can manually energize the compressor and get cold air. But if it's not controlled by the controller, you might, overcool your evaporator core, get icing, overload the compressor. You don't want to just put on a toggle switch like Scotty Kilmer would do. What's the correct fix here? This controller circuit's messed up. You have to replace the AC controller. Unfortunately, that sounds expensive, and the guy already shot a compressor at it, so that was wasted money and time. But this is proof there's nothing wrong with the actual wiring or the compressor. It has to be the controller itself. So I'll pause here, think of any other experiments you'd like to do. One thing I noticed and one thing I can't explain here is, it lights up the test light just fine. Test light is grounded through our body ground on this lead. What if we try to ground it through the compressor valve? That shouldn't carry any more current, right? So I'm just gonna put the test light lead into the wire going to the compressor, and it instantly doesn't like that. It says PW output for compressor actuator shorted. That's what really blows my mind. We have 0 amps. It does not like being grounded through the compressor. How do you explain that? If it's grounded through the body, it's fine. But being grounded through the compressor, it's not fine, and it can't carry more than 800 milliamps. So again, ground it through the body. Look, it came back. So many leads, you get a little confused sometimes. Here you go, 0.1 amps. It's happy. If you ground this through the compressor, look what happens. Sometimes it stays on. Let's add a little amperage here. So in parallel now, oh, right there, PW output. Before I even attached anything at all, it doesn't like that. Doesn't like activating the compressor, but it can light up a light bulb. So can anyone explain that? Should we put a scope on this thing to see maybe the signals are getting messed up somehow? But it's just a valve. And I assume the circuit's measuring current because it has diagnostic ability to say if it's shorted or not. Right there, it comes back on its own if it's disconnected. Right now, test light's not grounded to anything. It's completely disconnected. It's only 8%. It's only requested 8%. That's the one thing I can't explain. Are we 100% sure that we're calling this controller? I mean, there's nothing else it could be. So then it says button AC off operated. I didn't push any buttons. Why is that? Let's look at trouble codes. So this 9006, 9007, short circuit and open circuit. These are the codes that were initially set. Switch off ignition. Okay, yes. You gotta wait 10 seconds for it to clear the codes out. And the customer also said that once in a while the fan speed will go up and down, so it looks like the climate controller is going out. It's going funky. Switch on ignition. Fault memory completed. And data stream, AC control. Let's see here. See, why does it say button AC off operated? I didn't push any buttons. %. So I'm calling the controller. He said he'll get one at a junkyard, pop it in, we'll see if we're right. But cars like this, even the climate control is super complicated. The logic in there, you do your basic circuit checks, the wiring's good, compressor's good, it's been replaced, you know, it draws up to 1 amp. You can manually energize it and it'll get cold. You know, I tried that off camera, no issues. But this controller can't put out 1 amp, and if it's connected to the compressor, it just cuts out and says short circuit. Sorry. So we'll do a follow-up once the owner installs a new climate control, you know, module, I guess.